So I'm going to share a little bit about how we transform this a vacant is actually a commercial building. I'm going to kind of tell you the A to Z with it, and hopefully teach you teach you some strategies along the way. And what I'd like to do today is really share kind of the good, the bad, and the ugly, and share how we took a really tough situation and turned it around. And hopefully in that, you're going to get some tips for the challenges and obstacles you're up against. It was right around 2008. And at the time, we had just gotten started. We had just focused on Trenton, New Jersey as our area that we wanted to really invest in. We had done a 1031 exchange for the duplex outside of Philly into New Jersey. We wanted to make New Jersey our focus at the time. So this is the building. So at the time, we ran our numbers, and I'm just going to give you some stats here. It's a 10,000 square foot building. I'm going to move this, is $525,000 of a purchase price. And we had projected at the time that we would make about $5,000 per month had we had this building fully leased. This was our first commercial building, and we were excited about all the money we were going to make, and that's where we happened. So literally within about a month of us purchasing this building, the market crashed, and we were like, okay, we have a vacant building, and there was no organizations, companies banging down our door in Trenton, New Jersey at the time to rent out this building from us. So we started to do something that I think it gets underestimated right now, but I would highly recommend, especially right now in this economy. We asked the question, we started to say, okay, in this market with this particular building, what problem can we solve? You start to get resourceful, right? And so we started asking those questions. We met with local business leaders, the local housing authority. What we found was like attorneys and different professionals actually needed some office space. So we said, okay, what can we do with this huge building that we were thinking we were going to get one tenant? And just to give you some kind of stats, right? We ended up converting it into a small business center, about 18 tenants. So we hustled, we worked our ESs off, if you will, and to get the right tenants in here. And over, I think, about 6 months took us to get enough tenants to get stabilized. You know, to be perfectly frank with you, this building is older. This building had a lot of maintenance issues, all right? And we had a lot of ups and downs over the 15 years we owned the building. But we decided to sell it. It was time, and we sold it to one of our tenants for $925. Now, you might be like, wow, you made some serious money, Liz, on that building, if you remember what I bought it for and what I sold it for. However, we put a lot of work into this building, right? And we held it for many years, and literally, honestly, did not take a dime in terms of cash flow. If anything, we put money into the building, let alone taking it out. But we did profit, and we walked away with 6 figures. I tell you all of that because honestly, as a case study, there was 3 key things that are lessons that I can share with you. I wanted to pull out and give you here. So here are the top 3 lessons. And I always say this, I say this on my podcast, but so many people are so much more focused on the deal than the market. And right now more than ever, if you're going to be obsessed with something, you should be obsessed with the market and obviously know your numbers on the deal. I'm not saying don't know your properties and don't know anything. Of course, you want to know all those things. And why is it so important to be market focused? Here's just some key thoughts. It's easier to scale if you get very focused in the market. Like really know the market, get to know the brokers, the property managers, the city officials, the housing authority. I see so many times people just jumping from market to market looking for deals, when in reality, I see it makes so much more sense to go really focused. And that way you get to know, and that way you can scale much easier. It also gives you leverage, right? You can leverage maintenance, you can leverage management, and you can leverage money. When you're looking for private lenders or equity partners, people will trust you more when you have, say, a handful of properties in an area versus it being your first, because there's skin in the game, right? You have a portfolio there. You can also create local business collaboration. Obviously, we did that with our building, but you can do that when you're able to be known in a market and really get to know the people there. So those are just some key things of why be so market focused. Here's some things, again, that you want to know on the market that you're looking to jump into. Obviously, population growth. I keep it really simple. I like to keep things very simple. Are people coming to the area or are they leaving the area? Let's keep it really simple. And you obviously want to be investing in an area that the migration is coming, right? There's an increase of growth. There are people coming to, the jobs are coming to the area. People follow jobs. So keep that in mind. I'm a big fan of employment growth and diversity. I always get very, very worried if I see like a market that's really reliant on one industry or one, one type of focus. I like to see private, I like to see public, the startups, the entrepreneurial startups and the hospitals. When you can see those types of kind of different industries coexisting, there's diversity. So if you have a building and one of those, one of those industries goes down or closes, it won't be the market won't be affected necessarily. Economic drivers, supply and demand. I don't know about you, but you see it in places that there is so much supply, obviously that impacts demand, right? And you want to be in areas that, the demand is high and the supply is low, right? That's the wonderful place to be in real estate. And you don't have to be, again, in a developer to see this. See what's happening. Talk to the local economic advisors and economic folks. They'll tell you where they are with supply and demand. And you're seeing that in certain communities that are over supply. Well, that's tough, right? Because now the people are building and building and building, and there's not enough demand. Well, that's tough. That's a tough place to be. So be mindful of that. Affordability, local real estate and taxes, obviously, and you want to be mindful of really knowing rental income by property unit type. You got to know your product, and you have to know what that product will give you in terms of rental income, and appropriately know that, right? And obviously solving housing challenges. There is a housing shortage across the country. People want to afford where they want to live. That will never go out of business. I don't care what's happening in the economy. I don't care who's president of the United States. There'll always be a need for people being able to afford where they want to live. And so when you start thinking from that perspective and you start to say, what's happening in this local economy and how do I participate and grow my wealth? That's when you start to win in this business versus where's the next deal? Well, are you solving any problems in the community? Because if you're on that side of the equation, you'll always have opportunity, in my opinion. Now, why is it important to understand the micro ecosystem? Here's what I mean by that. You want to know, and the key to real estate is you want to know the types of businesses or services that are in demand. Not what you think is in demand, or not what your neighbor thinks is in demand, but actually what is in demand. I'm also a very big fan of like what has happened in the community so you can start to anticipate what the future moves are, right? And so what has happened and what can you kind of start to see, okay, wow, more of this is coming into town or this type of housing is needed. I don't think there'll ever be a community that doesn't need quality housing that's affordable. And then you want to think about competitive positioning, right? How does your property that you're looking to do in a particular market actually compete with amenities and pricing and everything? Well, I want to call every mid-size, right, between 10 and 20 units, whether it's 1970s or if it's new construction, I don't know what age it is, but whatever type of property that is and unit count, I want to call other buildings like that. I want to see what they're offering. I want to see what their rental prices are. I want to see what incentives they have. That's what you can do. So that way you can really be competitive with what you're offering and also differentiate knowing that local economy. And then quite honestly, what's unique? For our building, we say, what can we do that's different from everyone else? So again, it's that unique selling proposition. How are you positioning your product, your building, yourself in a unique way to really meet the needs of the local economy, right? That's what I'm speaking about here. The data that matters, I wish I did a better job of this when we were underwriting and figuring out our commercial building, right? Like I said, my husband and I ran the numbers and said, okay, if we get one tenant paying this for 16 square foot, per square foot, okay, it's a 10,000 square foot house, building, excuse me, we're going to make $5,000, whatever the math is, right? The point is that we actually didn't do a great job of really knowing our numbers. So when you're analyzing deals and you're underwriting, and underwriting is just a fancy way of analyzing the project for what it is and what it could be, you really want to look at obviously income of today and potential income. Because I know so many people that may buy a single family home and they're turning it into a rent by the room situation where they're able to triple their income versus it being one tenant. So again, income of today And then what could it be? Again, aligned with the regulations of the town, of course. And then you want to look into expenses. Again, we underestimated our expenses when we bought this building. Taxes alone on this building were $20,000. I think when we bought the building, they were 10, but they were about to get reassessed. And that's another tip. If you're about to buy a building, you can always talk to the city, the tax office, if you will, and kind of get a sense of when our tax is getting reassessed. And then you can fight some of the property taxes. My point in saying all that is you really want to be mindful of taxes, because they can go up very significantly if you don't know where you are in the cycle of purchase. And there's obviously a bunch of different variable costs and fixed costs. So always trust but verify. The previous owner is selling the building for a reason, especially if it's a residential, commercial, I don't care. I've bought so many buildings over the years, obviously. I don't know if any owner has ever given us the exact amount of money that the expenses were. So if that's the case, you need to trust, but then verify your expenses so you set yourself up for success. I wish I knew that a little bit more when I got started. And then projecting rents. I just want to be really make a point of this, because what you're finding is that you can be conservative with your rent projections, but I don't know, if you've heard, but and if anyone's around, they're from Austin, right? Investors were projecting Austin rental growth to go up very significantly, and they've actually dropped. So again, supply and demand affects rental projections. So again, no one has a crystal ball, but when you put all these pieces together of supply and demand, where's the market now? Where is it going? There's a lot of moving parts, right? And no one's perfect at that. I'm a very big fan in terms of markets that are not on the hottest market list, but are actually on, if you Googled hottest markets in real estate right now, you take a list of those 5. I'm not the biggest fan of investing in those 5, because if they're on the hottest real estate market, you're late to the game. You're late to the party. Everyone was there at 7 and you got there at 9 o'clock. You're late. You're late to the party. What I actually have done is, if you take those hot market lists and then said, okay, what's within an hour radius of these areas? Those are up and coming areas. People are moving there because they can't afford that hot market anymore. Those could be up and coming areas. Those are the markets that are like secondary markets that have always been my favorite markets. Perfect example of that is one of our favorite markets that we're in is Winston-Salem, North Carolina. We haven't invested in Raleigh or Durham. Those are 2 probably a little more popular areas in North Carolina, but Winston-Salem, which most people are like, I've never heard of Winston-Salem, but it's actually a booming area. Economically, our rents have gone up 5 times for the buildings that we have, about 600 units there. And they have an incredible economic development happening, and has been, in terms of investments. So again, it's an hour away from one of the hotter markets in North Carolina. So again, just a little tip there. Take the hot markets and draw an hour radius around them, and those are probably more up and coming areas that are great to think about. Okay, all right, I got a lot of words on the slide. I'm going to go through these quickly, but the bottom line, what I want to share quickly with you here, is that what we didn't do as good of a job, me and my husband, when we bought this vacant building, is really evaluate the property, everything from the risks, the competitive landscape, the site analysis, the layout of the building, everything. I mean, my husband and I kind of just ran our numbers, got excited about the cash flow, and went for it. And we moved too quickly when we really should have done more due diligence before purchasing. And also, it seems so obvious, but when I ask people, what's your plan with the property? They're like, what do you mean the plan? I'm just going to put a tenant in and get the rental income. Well, that's simple. You usually need a little more, what's the plan? If you're a multifamily investor and you're buying a 10 unit, a 20 unit, or for us, right, multiple 100 units, you have a business plan. And that's the whole point of, stabilizing the asset and increasing your net operating income. Think like that if you have a single family home. What is the plan? What am I going to do? How long am I going to carry this building? And what's the exit strategy? So act like you have a 100 unit, even if you have if it's a single family. So that way you're really treating it as a business versus just, I'm going to put a tenant in it. Well, okay, but you might need a little more detail than that. I wish we did that better too with this property. And then the last thing I wanted to share quickly here is the, as you're figuring things out, what is the renovation plan, right? How do you optimize space? The beautiful part about real estate is that, you could have the same building and you have two different people with two different visions. One is optimizing the space, one is not. And so again, that's really critical. I'm going to wrap up here. Number one was market over deal, competitive due diligence, and strategic repositioning. I didn't know those three things when we bought this building, but we did do the number three, but it took a little longer than we had wanted. So had I done these three more strategically, we probably would have done even better with the building. But regardless, that's all learning, and you bring that into your next deal.
Thanks for listening to the DealMachine Real Estate Investing Podcast. Please leave us a review and follow along wherever you're listening to your podcast.